All right, I've got a fun announcement here to start off today's video. I am going to have early access to Modern Horizons 3 cards for the purposes of doing some testing and recording, which is very exciting. This recording is going to happen on June 7th. If you already know that you are interested in doing a donation deck list with Modern Horizon cards, if you submit that prior to that date, there is a good chance that I might play some test games with your deck before the set is even available to the general public on Magic Online. This would probably be in addition to the actual league that you get with the cards, so if you already know that you've got something cracked that you want to try out, please consider doing your donation deck list ahead of time. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video, and today we're going to be doing something pretty cool. We are going to be playing a deck that has a Transformational Sideboard. So in game 1, we are going to be Reanimator, and in games 2 or 3, some portion of the time, we are going to transition to being a Dark Depths deck. So we are going to do a 15 card swap, 15 cards in, 15 cards out. This leaves us with very little ability to adjust to sort of small nuances of matchups, and really gives us the ability to just nope out of a matchup if we don't think our current approach is good. And we're going to be seeking to dodge a lot of sideboard hate cards and really just kind of do psychological warfare with our opponents today. This is the deck list, and you'll see that I've got it kind of separated out in a weird way. More on that in a second. So in game 1, we are a Mono Black Reanimator deck list. And you can kind of see the Grief Reanimate scam package that all of you know and love. That's right, all of you love it. I said so. Alongside a bunch of large creatures. The spice here is probably Galta Stampede Tyrant, which often has homes at the casual EDH tables. When it enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So this can be a really cute thing to entomb for if you've got like an Archon or an Atraxa in hand already, and can kind of give you multiple creatures at the cost of putting a single creature into play. And you'll notice that I've pulled 15 cards out over here. There's 15 cards in this sideboard. In the post-sideboard games, we can do something that approximates this. More on that in a second. To bring in the Dark Depths combo. So, with Dark Depths, we can either rip all of the counters off of it with Vampire Hexmage or Thespian Stage so that we can produce a 20/20. And Spoils of the Vault can be a tutor for one of our missing combo pieces. Now, the reason I say that we can do something that approximates this is when you are boarding in and out this many cards, there's a little bit of flexibility to how to do it. For example, we could throw Entomb into this pile, and we could keep something like Animate Dead for Troll instead, which is perfectly reasonable. So you can do something like this, or keep Animate Dead over there. You know, you've got a little bit of flexibility in how you mess around with this. And the Reanimates can also be used to bring back a Vampire Hexmage, should that die to something like an Orcish Bowmasters, while you're waiting to assemble the other portion of your combo. So this is a neat approach that Jeffrey sent in, and I'm excited to mess around with this one. The Transformational Sideboard is kind of this dream from many, many years ago. Probably like 15 or more years ago now, where some decks just kind of caught people totally by surprise. I think there was like this Thopter Depths deck that was very popular, where you were a Thopter Foundry Sword of the Meek, sort of mid-range combo deck list, and then you boarded into Dark Depths. Wasn't around exactly in that time period playing competitive Magic, so I'm not exactly sure. But I think the dream ever since then has been to kind of replicate that sort of hybrid transformational sideboard combo nonsense. Old heads, feel free to get in the comments and let me know kind of exactly how that went. Would appreciate it. And folks, should you need some cards, check out toamagic.com. They're my sponsor. They support me well, and honestly, their services are great. I ordered a bunch of cards for Commander. They were here like literally the next day. I was super surprised when I got the package. I was not expecting it for a few more days. And the shipping, by the way, is free. You need some cards, you want it in one envelope from one place, TOA is the place to go. Let's go put some Griselbrands in play, huh? Okay. This hand is good. There's a cheeky line I could do, and then there's the line that I'm actually going to take. The cheeky line is Thoughtseize myself, take Galta, animate dead Galta, put Troll into play. I think I just want to Thoughtseize, though, and see if Force of Will is there. Force of Will is not there. So now I need to kind of weigh Emery versus Kappa Cannoneer. I think I just take the Emery here. So we will do another Dark Ritual. I will Swamp Cycle this Troll. Pick up a Swamp. Animate dead. I will not take your Emery. I will take my Troll. We've got 1 mana left over. And not counting my opponent's Ancient Tomb, we have a 4-turn clock here, which is pretty likely to race what they're doing. We could see an Otawara or something of that nature take my Troll out of play. There is Tundra showing, which is a little bit weird. I don't know if that's the correct time to crack that bauble. I've shown discard already. Maybe you wait. Hand not exactly full of gasoline right now. We are all in on this Super Menace Troll. I guess we're not worried about Swords to Plowshares if my opponent is showing me Chalice of the Void, right? I don't know if I play that Urborg. Playing that Urborg could save my opponent points of life off the Ancient Tomb that is known information. I think I'm just going to hold that in hand. My opponent might just be waiting to see if I show any other cards here. Yeah, no, Chalice on 0 is fine. That allows my opponent to put the Kappa into play, although it still doesn't get to block because, Super Menace. So you can take that counter. Shadow Spear could, I guess, be a problem. I could animate dead in Emery. I don't know that that makes sense. If things go south, I think I want to be able to put Archon of Cruelty into play to answer a Kappa Cannoneer that has Shadow Spear on it. Opponent does not have Shadow Spear. We're good. So, do I want to transform? I don't have to transform. It is going to be optional. So I know that my opponent has Otawara. They may have a, Aether Spellbomb, the blue Spellbomb, as a Urza Saga tutorable way to answer a 2020. Graveyard Hate could vary a little bit. Tormod's Crypt is often common, and cards of that general nature. The artifact synergy is kind of obvious. The 2020 could, in theory, get chump blocked by Thought Monitors and then recurred via Emery. I'm not sure that I want to do the Transformational Sideboard for this game. Like, this, if I naturally draw it, does not walk into counterspells, which is a big upside. I think I'm just gonna play the game 1 deck again for game 2. This is a medium opening hand that is going to be pretty good at punching through counterspells. It is not fast, but I'm going to hope that it's okay. Okay, yeah, and this sort of thing is why I was very hesitant about the whole 2020 plan. This was maybe even main decked. So I don't think I'm going to Thoughtseize this turn. I think I'm just going to pass my turn and discard a creature. I think I'm going to discard Atraxa here over Archon. Ooh. Let's start punching my way through my opponent's counterspells that, presumably are in their hand. There's one of them. My opponent was willing to Force of Negation there. They gave me 2 cards. They might have something good that they are trying to protect. That's fine. That explains the actual factual Tundra. Oh, wonderful draw. So now we will Thoughtseize. Ooh, it was Rest in Peace. Understood. Bonus Metallic Rebuke is not online currently. I'm just going to take Rip. That Reanimate was a very good draw. So we will put the Atraxa into play. I will take a Creature. Land. Sorcery. Done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I just passed the turn here. We'll see if my opponent wants to use their open Aether Spellbound mana to bounce Atraxa to hand. They don't. If they did, I would just immediately discard it. Oh, this is some serious villain shit right here. Send it. All right, so this gets bounced. Well, folks, guess what is now not available? Metallic Rebuke. So we are going to go ahead and, I guess, Grief, pitch the Unmask here. And we're just going to kind of double check everything that's over there. I will just take a Metallic Rebuke, I guess. It doesn't super matter. Let's just do a quick check. No creatures over there. So now I'm going to go ahead and Entomb. We are going to select Galta, Stampede Tyrant. And I am going to cast Exhume now. Oh, I wanted to do it. Oh, I was going to put in Archon and Atraxa, and it was going to be delicious. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and I could say all sorts of great things about them, but I'm just going to point to this number. I have 488 deck lists stored on this site. That should give you a feel for how I feel about this website. And if you were to go to my profile, you could see all the deck lists that I'm messing around with, including my EDH decks, and you can even see some of the deck lists I record with before they hit the channel. Ooh. Okay, my hand is going to be a keep. It's probably start on Grief, pitch Exhume as a starting point, and then I decide whether or not I need to Thoughtseize or just Troll. I would prefer to Troll on turn 1 so that I can just do an Animate Dead or Exhume on turn 2. But if my opponent is threatening some combo line of their own, I might have to pivot a little bit. Okay, so we know what's up here. Animate Dead is a trigger. Zoom isn't, so I will take Force of Will here and then just play around Stifle by doing this at sorcery speed rather than at instant speed. This is a little awkward if my opponent rips Reanimate as their top card. Otherwise, it's fine. Is Thoughtseize plus Reanimate better? It helps me out if an actual counterspell was drawn. I think I am okay with doing that. It was... I'll take Force of Will. So they've got these left. So the Troll is the best clock. I think I am just going to take Grief right now. And then I can Animate Dead the Troll next turn. My opponent can Stifle this trigger if they want to lose Stifle. But then Animate Dead gets turned on a little bit later. And I am still succeeding in getting a card with the Grief. Oh, they are valuing that second land very highly. That's fine. So that we don't just lose to Giant Murktide Regent, we will be taking that now. And my opponent is left with kind of some subpar cards. And we just kind of hope to wiggle into a spot where I can Animate Dead around that Stifle. Another Reanimate too. Okay, so let's go ahead and attack with Grief and see if my opponent wants to trade Bowmasters for it, just heads up. They do not. A Reanimate in theory should still be fine. We can do that, play around a top-decked Daze here, and call it a turn. I'll get pinged for 1 at end of turn. And now my opponent needs to dig for answers to this Troll. It looks like they're probably some sort of Beans build. The Stifle is a little weird, but like the Green mana is probably indicative of going a little bigger, and my opponent valued that next land drop very highly as well. Sheoldred's Edict. I will be getting rid of Grief, and we'll just bash in with the troll that currently can't be blocked as a starting point. And Animate Dead is currently perfectly fine on Grief. Don't think I want to exhume here. So bam. We did this around the Stifle successfully. Now we get to take the Stifle, leave them with Mystic Sanctuary. Mystic Sanctuary currently not online. Wasteland, not an island. So we see the Brainstorm here. Opponent needs to convert Mystic Sanctuary into something that somehow answers this troll. An Edict isn't going to do it because I can just Grief. Alright, so they can use this Surveil land to take one of the cards that they put back away. They put back a Murktide Regent, which is awkward due to the Wasteland. It otherwise would have been a very strong card, but opponent kind of needs to play things immediately. So my opponent is attacking here. It seems like that is indicative of another Orcish Bowmasters. Do I just block their Bowmasters, make them use their Bowmasters ping on it? I take one creature out of play, and then Troll is still a 2-turn clock. That seems fine. This could be enabling a Fatal Push. I will go ahead and take the block here. Alright, it is another Bowmaster. So I lose this. Grief goes down. I am at 5. So I just need to kind of wiggle in a way so that my opponent dies next turn. The top card being an Edict is a little rough. Witherbloom Command can, I guess, kill me. My Thoughtseize is dead. I can't exhume. Murktide Regent comes back and attacks me for lethal. So my cards are not playable here. So how good was that Brainstorm? Not good enough. We get our butt over the line here. So, I think our Transformational Sideboard is going to fail us again, because our opponent is a Stifle Wasteland deck, so innately they are just good against the Dark Depths plan. And this is not counting anything that they could bring in from the sideboard, such as Brazen Borrower, to mess around with this further. Vampire Hexmage, not the best versus Orcish Bowmasters. I think, unfortunately, for the second round in a row, we are not sideboarding. We are just sticking to our guns. Opponent sideboarded so quickly. I have no mana sources here, so this is a no-go from me. This is fine. Turn 1, Troll Cycle. Turn 2, Reanimate or Animate Dead. I am good with this. I am throwing back one of the 2 creatures. They are both 8 mana. I'm probably not hard casting either. How many copies of each of these do I have? 3 Grizzlebrands, 2 Archons. I ended up doing a lot of self-damage last game. I think I'm going to keep the Archon over the Grizzlebrand. Oof. So that Spellbomb means that I'm going to have to attempt to go off through the graveyard twice. Missing out on the troll is not the end of the world. Like, I will certainly recover from that. The next question is really, how do I get the next creature into my graveyard? And the answer might be discard to hand size. Okay, the answer is that Thoughtseize. So probably for mana efficiency, I am going to Animate Dead this troll and see if my opponent cracks their Spellbomb. If they just have an Edict, they could let this resolve. Okay, fantastic. They are cracking that. So that means on my next turn, I have the option to Thoughtseize myself, take Archon, Reanimate Archon, if I think the coast is clear. It's a little risky to do so. That's not a Surveil land, that's just a Trop. Okay, they needed the mana immediately to cycle. Makes sense. So what am I afraid of from my opponent? Cards like Leovold or Narset are a little bit annoying here. So I think this is a time where I have to decide, do things get better for me if I wait? I think the answer is no. So I think I go ahead and just try to jam. And I think I assume that it's not necessarily going to work the first time. I will discard my Archon, attempt to reanimate it, and I assume that I am going to eat some we fucking resolved! Oh shit! I was building this whole narrative. Now, it turns out my opponent's Leovold is just dead. What's the order here? Am I going to get to draw my card? Yes, I am going to get to draw my card. Leovold is dead by the time the bottom portion of Archon of Cruelty's ability resolves. And it's another reanimate from the top rope! The crowd goes wild! Yeah! Yeah! So now my opponent does not get to cantrip for a thing that gets them out of this situation. An edict doesn't do it. Oh, that's gross. That is absolutely filthy. That spellbomb is just a hair too late, friend. I'm sorry. Oh, and they targeted me, so I get to use Leovold's ability to draw a card. Delicious. Oh. Fatal push on Leovold. Yes, I will draw another card. I would rather have the Leovold than that card. Like, a basic swamp isn't doing me any good. But that Leovold did a little work for me. We are probably not getting to hardcast Grizzlebrand from hand territory or anything. But life's good. Let's see if we can draw a relevant card off Archon of Cruelty to round out this turn here. Nope, it's another Grizzlebrand. Now my opponent is at 7. Archon kills them next turn. I can't cast these Grizzlebrands. The Entomb doesn't do anything by itself. An Edict here stabilizes the board. They get 3 looks with this Brainstorm. Nope, they're just dead. Yeah, apparently our deck is perfect and we don't even need to use the Transformational Sideboard. Okay, my opponent is on 6 cards. My hand's a little weird. It probably just involves drawing a card for my turn, moving to discard, putting Grizzlebrand into my graveyard, and then going off on turn 2. That is my conceptual plan, unless something changes that. Urza's Saga does not change that plan. We don't just hardcast Grizzlebrand, right? 1, 3, 5, 6. We don't. So to the yard with you, Grizzlebrand. And then next turn, I'm going to have a bunch of mana and probably at least 1 Grizzlebrand activation. I don't know that I mess around with a second one. If my opponent is a blue deck here, a Force of Will or Force of Negation is pretty devastating. Like, we're almost certainly going to see Ancient Tomb as their land drop. They're just fucking done with me. So we are playing against Urza's Saga. That is all we know. So there's probably like a 50-50 chance that my opponent is about to bring in Leyline of the Void. So this is the time for this whole transformational sideboard thing. Urza's Saga could tutor up answers to this stuff, but I think for game 2, I am in on this. So let's go all this big stuff out here. Let's go the Exhumes out. And I think I'm going to go with Entomb out in this case. If we accidentally reanimate Troll or Grief with Animate Dead, we're perfectly happy with that. But I don't know that I want to kind of deviate from the original plan here. We're kind of doing the Riskaminator thing of having both Animate Dead and Reanimate alongside just fair stuff in some cases, even if you end up cutting the larger creatures. I am a mana away from greatness. Any black source means that I just have a turn 2 kill, or a turn 2 Merit Lage. I think despite the awkwardness here, I am willing to keep this hand. It has both of my combo pieces, and it has Disruption. I think I keep this, accepting the fact that I am not always going to turn 2 my opponent here. Oh, don't Thoughtseize me and take Lotus Petal. Fuck. Okay. The jig is fucking up, folks, and my read on my opponent was wrong. Was very much not expecting Swamp Thoughtseize after seeing Urza Saga on turn 1. Like, I was expecting Ancient Tomb. We could still be like some sort of Beseech the Mirror, Karn, Helm deck. Oh, what? They took Animate Dead? I guess as a starting point, let's grief them. I need more information about what deck my opponent is playing here. Praying to Keranos that they are not a Wasteland deck as well. Ancient Tomb Opposition Agent would also be a bit problematic. Why are we using a fairy on an Animate Dead in response to a grief? I do not understand. Oh, I understand now. My opponent has nothing. Just stone cold nothing. 3 lands. Understood. So I'm going to pass the turn here. If I top deck a land, I will just play Vampire Hexmage and win the game. And if I don't, I will cycle Troll to turn Lotus Petal into Swamp. We are a skilled magician, though, so we just top deck the Swamp. So now there becomes this question of when do I use Vampire Hexmage? And is my opponent playing Wasteland? If they're playing Wasteland, I need to use it now. If they're not playing Wasteland... Okay, that's an Urza Saga bullet. I'm getting like Mono Black aggro vibes. I think I am going to play around Wasteland by cracking this now. It's more awkward if my opponent draws an Edict now, but I think I just need to play around Wasteland, and it has to be my opponent's... Sorry, an answer to this just has to be my opponent's top card here, or they are donezo. Well, they didn't concede, but they are passing the turn. I am perfectly fine thought seizing here. Before I attack, just see if something weird is going to happen. I sacrifice a creature token, so that is indeed going to work. Opponent just has lands now, and I'll pass the turn. Sort of unfortunate, but, you know, the Surveil land allowed my opponent to get 1 card deeper and find their answer. That's what it's supposed to do. I will have reasonable to good top decks. A reanimation effect can still get a troll out of the graveyard and be a swift clock. I'm not under any pressure. If my opponent has reanimates of their own, this could be awkward. I don't have anything cute like a Surveil land to go and pick up here, unfortunately. It is just extra mana. I guess I am just going to put that mana into play so that a grief or whatever from my opponent does not take the Lotus Petal. I am hoping that this game does not go long enough where my opponent... where I have to, like, start hardcasting Grizzlebrands or something. Oh, I guess those are in my sideboard, so that's just not happening. Douthie Voidwalker, that's fine. I'm just going to hold that for now. If I am about to do some cool combo turn, I think I will check with Unmask then. Alright, that is a reanimate on my troll. That is legitimately scary and takes away some of my better top decks. Spoils of the Vault. This is a tutor. I'm just taking 9 damage immediately. I can get a Grief or Vampire Hexmage into play with this. I'm just going to die, though. Like, even if I get one piece of my combo this turn and the other piece next turn, the Troll just kills me in 2 hits, and Douthie Voidwalker can't be blocked. 9/18 just kills me. I don't have a bounce spell or anything. I'm just dead. That's unfortunate. So do I want to stay on this plan? My opponent has shown me fairies, which are very good against my whole combo thing. My opponent has showed me Douthie Voidwalkers, which are also good against that plan. So I think I am staying on the 2020 plan, just with the known info that my opponent does have edicts, which can specifically answer my 2020. Okay. Dark Writ, 5 mana, cast Grief, take a card from my opponent's Spoils of the Vault for Dark Depths. Seems perfectly reasonable. So I will keep this. Spoils is scary, like you can kind of instantly die to it. But it seems like the sort of thing that I should be willing to go for here. Hard to cast. Now, I can't touch a Wasteland effect if my opponent has something like that. They have a Reanimate. I don't care about that. I, in fact, don't care about most of my opponent's cards here. Don't care about Fairy, don't care about Reanimate. Is Shadow Spear their best card? Shadow Spear is probably their best card. And now we're going to Spoils for Dark Depths and hope that I don't die. I am at 20 life, and now I am at 16 life. That wasn't so bad. I am probably not casting this next Spoils of the Vault. If I did, it would probably be for Thoughtseize, and there is one Thoughtseize in exile already, so, you know, there's a very real degree of risk there. Let's get their graveyard back on screen, though. Badlands. You're gonna just cast a fairy? Oh, it is a troll. Just immediate troll reanimate. That is a fantastic top deck. So they are at 14. Troll attacks for 6. Troll does not block grief. So I think I am doing okay here. I'll attack for 3, bring them to 11. The fairy as a blocker, I guess, is real. I'm still glad that I took Shadow Spear, so my opponent is not attacking in sets of 6 here. But I might need to Spoils. Currency Converter is fine. No, Spoils doesn't make any sense, right? Because if I Spoils, then I am not activating Dark Depths immediately. Alright, so I'm at 10. I think everything is still okay. Animate Dead does not change anything here. I'm going to play Thespian Stage and attack for my 3. My opponent's at 8. I think I am going to go ahead and just Sorcery Speed, make my 20/20. Play around Wasteland. Keep the one with no ice counters. I think I'm just... The fairy's a problem, right? Like, I get attacked for 6, go to 4. My opponent blocks with fairy. And then I get attacked 2 dead. Yeah. So I don't have a way to force this through, right? I have Animate Dead effects. All this stuff is in the sideboard. I have all this stuff. I need a couple more points of damage here, which I don't have. There is not another creature in the graveyard for me to Animate Dead so that I can block the troll. I attack. Fairy goes to graveyard. I can reanimate Fairy. That's still only 2 creatures. That doesn't get through the troll. Yeah, I think that top decked troll on turn 1 turned the game. So what I need to do is pass the turn and hope that my opponent plays around like an Orcish Bowmasters being flashed in. I do not think that is something that they should play around. All right, we are getting a construct. Maybe a construct with haste if something like Lava Spur Boots gets involved. It is Pithing Needle on stage, which is perfectly fine. And if this troll turns sideways, I'm done. I am indeed dead. That is unfortunate. GG's. Okay, opening hand is pretty strong here. I've got a little bit of flexibility. I'm always starting with a grief, and I can decide whether or not I would like to reanimate this grief immediately on turn 1, based on what I see from my opponent's hand. I see a reanimate. I'm going to start probably by taking that. I don't know that I need to take another card from this hand. I think I am just going to Sorcery Speed Entomb and reanimate on turn 2. Or I guess I could Troll Cycle at their end step. Either way, it's a little weird. They have Bayou as their land here. That's a weird keep. Anyway, I'm going to take Reanimate. I don't even get to cantrip. I'm just going to resolve Entomb right now and hope that their top card of their library is not anything crazy. Galta, Atraxa, how do I want to do this? Atraxa's fine. Atraxa has lifelink. Alright, top card was not Reanimate. Urborg is fine. It turns these wastelands into black sources. I don't think that's the end of the world, though. Let's Reanimate. See if their top card was Force of Will. Top card was not Force of Will. We get the immediate concession. So we know that we are playing against a Wasteland deck. And that means pivoting into the Dark Depths plan is not necessarily the best. Awkwardly, our opponent is also a Reanimator deck, meaning that if I Entomb and leave a thing there, or if I Troll Cycle there and leave it there, they can reanimate my stuff. I think this is a I'm not sideboarding situation. Like, a Wasteland Bowmasters deck is pretty good at covering these bases, so I think we're just staying the course here. If I'm willing to jam, I can just jam on turn 1. I'm going to keep. This is not necessarily my ideal hand. I don't think that it is just super safe to just go for it on turn 1. There is another Entomb. I could hard discard Atraxa here. If I do so, my opponent gets the first chance at reanimating that, so I don't think I like that plan. I think I am going to go for an Entomb at my opponent's end step, see if that Entomb gets countered. I have a second one if it doesn't. Alright, just land and pass. So let's attempt this. Okay, the Entomb happens. I think I'm going to throw Galta into the graveyard. If Galta gets surgicaled, it is just a singleton card. Grief is fantastic. What am I pitching? Is it the Dark Ritual? The Dark Ritual lets me play around Spell Pierce type cards easier. I could cast Dark Ritual and just cast Grief. I don't think that's the way that I'm winning, though. The Atraxa is very good if Galta does hit play. I don't know that Galta is hitting play. Let's attempt to Grief getting rid of Dark Ritual. Let's keep the Atraxa for if Galta does work. Okay, Grief is resolving. So my opponent does not have any counterspells. They have a Stifle. Stifle works on Animate Dead. I don't care about Bowmasters. I'm not drawing cards. Yeah, so I'm just going to take the Stifle and probably just instantly win. Yep. Grief good confirmed. Animate Dead. Target Galta. Galta comes into play, which lets me put Atraxa into play. Oh, I see I have to hit the OK button afterwards. Now, Atraxa lets me rip through a bunch of cards, and we still just get there. Turns out the game 1 configuration of this deck is very good. My opponent says, good luck, have fun. I say, turn 1 Grief, reanimate. We are not the same. What do I pitch to the Grief, though? Exhume? Probably Exhume. Brazen Borrower, double Lightning Bolt. That's a little weird. I take a Brazen Borrower, I reanimate, take a Lightning Bolt. My opponent Lightning Bolts Grief, I animate Dead. Yeah, okay. Alright. Borrower gone. Not going to reanimate Brazen Borrower. Now let's take one of those Lightning Bolts. So my opponent has Lightning Bolt and 4 lands available. Got it. It is a Delver of Secrets instead. You know, I kind of planned my turn around my Grief being dead. Opponent's at 16. This is their unknown card. I think I just animate Dead to their Brazen Borrower as a 2-power flyer. And then I reanimate, presumably Grief when it dies. This just kind of keeps the tempo up here. Brainstorm to flip? No, they were thinking about it. Now, there's a bobble. The speed matters a lot here. They bobbled themselves, presumably to decide whether or not they are playing a fetch land or not immediately. There's the Lightning Bolt on the Grief, which is fine. Opponent offers me a trade. Oh, it doesn't fly right now. I can't block it right now because I can only block creatures with flying. And this is the unflipped Delver of Secrets. Yeah, you got it. Ooh, that's an Entomb. Opponent's at 14 after this attack, and I can Entomb into Reanimate and do something unfair, or I can just Reanimate Grief and probably just win a fair game anyway. If I take 4, I am at 11. If I take 3 from the attack, I am at 8. I am attacking for 5. That's actually a little dicey. I think right now, I'm just going to try to resolve Entomb. Atraxa and Galta both accomplish me getting a lifelinker into play. Galta does so with some flash. I think I'm gonna just put Atraxa into yard though. So if Delver flips to a counter spell, things get a little spicy. Delver does not flip. That is great for me. It is another Delver, and then the Misty that we know about. So we've got land drop, one unknown card. Probably not a counter spell, and I am willing enough to bet on that I'm just going to cast Reanimate on Atraxa. Daze be damned. I think Daze would have hit Entomb last turn. Atraxa is in play. We've got some goodies, so we will take a Swamp, a Lotus Petal, an Unmask, Dark Ritual, or Entomb. I guess Entomb. Land instant sorcery artifact, that's 4. Done. Land drop. Artifact. At this point, I'm not doing anything with this Grizzlebrand. Let's unmask my opponent. Pitching the Grizzlebrand. Unholy Heat on Brazen Borrower. Weird Moto lag burst. Did my opponent concede? Okay, I think it was just figuring out what zone things should be in. All right, so we unmask our opponent. We see the Volcanic Island that we already know about. And with that, we'll go ahead and pass the turn. The opponent's dream card is probably like a Brazen Borrower that gets the Atraxa out of play. They might not have more than one of those in the main deck. If they do, that's what they're looking for. Ponder is not Brazen Borrower. That was not a shuffle, so they found something they liked. Counterbalance is fine. I guess I will Entomb in response to that. There's very little downside of putting an Archon of Cruelty into my graveyard. And my opponent gets a couple of turns to do their thing. They can take some Delver blocks if they like. At the point where Delver starts blocking, things are probably not good for them. A third Delver. What did they keep off the Ponder? Like, did they just keep a counterbalance off of Ponder with an Atraxa in play? That seems very weird to me. All right, we are in Delver's have to chump block territory. Can't hardcast a Grief yet. Opponent has no cards in hand, so we're chilling. Delver trigger. Negative. It's a bobble. And that sort of slow cantrip is not the best right now. Immediacy matters a lot. Like, I don't know how many outs my opponent has to this situation, but I do not imagine that it is many. And in Atraxa, we have to get another chump block here. Post-combat, I'm going to go ahead and unmask my opponent. I'll pitch this Thoughtseize. And the whole goal here is just to get something like a Daze out of my opponent's hand. They've got Misty Rainforest on top. That's not going to flip Delver. I take yet another Delver, and we're donezo. So, we now ask that question, am I transforming? And we are playing against a Wasteland Brazen Borrower deck. So, that's not the best. It feels like no. It also just feels like I want access to Atraxa and Archon. There aren't very many answers to the 2020 if I make the 2020. So that's a pretty big if. And if my opponent is maxing out on like Delvers and DRCs and things that aggressively attack my life total, Spoils of the Vault is a little risky. So I don't remember exactly. I imagine that we did this in... Sorry, that we replayed the main deck in 3 of our 5 rounds or something like that without any adjustments. Hand's fine. I'll just hard discard Atraxa on turn 1. And then attempt to go off with protection on turn 2. DRC is probably the scariest turn 1 play outside of something like Grafdigger's Cage. Do I have a turn 1 with protection here? Grief, pitch, unmask... No, I don't have enough black cards to do that. I can unmask myself. I can't grief myself. So I am just going to discard Atraxa, just keeping in mind that my opponent could follow this up with like a Grafdigger's Cage immediately and make my life pretty awkward. But otherwise, I have at least one, maybe multiple layers of protection for next turn. All right, the surveilling begins. Opponent probably wants to relatively aggressively put cards into the graveyard here. I say as they keep a card on top. They get to draw that card with that bauble. I'm only taking one this turn. I would like to draw a black card here so that I have multiple layers of protection, and I do. Fantastic. So let's play out some mana. I think we are going to Grief, pitch and Unmask here as the starting point. This is the point where a Surgical could go on the Atraxa. Don't do it. Seek the Beast is fine. That taps my opponent out. Ponder and Delver. That's fine. Ooh. Am I just going in? Daze and Brainstorm and Murktide. Yeah, so I'm just going to get to Animate Dead Atraxa. I'm going to take Daze here. We can get Murktide in a minute. Animate Dead. Target Atraxa. This costs me one of my Lotus Petals. I immediately get to reload. These are some goodies. So I get a land. I just have Dark Ritual, Entomb, Exhume? No, I don't get all of it. I will take Entomb. I will take Exhume. I think I'm going to take Troll over Galta. Sorcery instant creature land. Sorcery instant creature land. Done. My opponent has Brainstorm and Murktide Regent here. Next turn, if I don't use Lotus Petal, I can just Entomb into Exhume immediately. So let's unmask my opponent. I want their Murktide Regent, I think. I'll pitch Troll. Pitching Troll and Thoughtseize feel about the same to me. Take Murktide Regent. Call it a turn. I can Thoughtseize, take the Brainstorm. This has to attack right now. I think this is a fine turn. So the digging now begins, presumably for Brazen Borrower. Atraxa needs to leave play. That's a shuffle. That's what I want to see. There's the Delver. There's Wasteland. That slows me down. Yep. We'll take our nice bonus chunk of life here. Call it a turn. I could Animate Dead a Grief immediately. I think I'd rather use Animate Dead on a real creature another turn or so from now. I think I will go ahead and just Thoughtseize my opponent here. Force of Will and Brainstorm. I don't really care about Force of Will. I much more care about this Brainstorm. We'll just start swinging in with Atraxa. Opponent does not have green mana showing here for the old Druid. See what Delver shows us. Delver does not flip. Probably a good thing for me. Not 100% guaranteed, but probably. With a second Animate Dead, I can start thinking about just using that fairly on like Grief or Murktide Regent or whatever. Opponent is at 7. I know they have Force of Will in hand. Yeah, let's just Animate Dead the Grief here. Fantastic. Take the Force of Will, leave them with Valk. Valk is not green mana for this. Yeah, that'll do. So that is a 4-1, where we didn't sideboard in most of the rounds. Well, obviously, that was a great league that was very pleasant to play. I feel very good about this Game 1 deck list. This seems like a very good budget Legacy deck. No dual lands here, no fetch lands here. I'm sure this still adds up to a decent amount of money because it is Legacy after all. But this is the sort of thing where if you wanted to get into Legacy without the dual lands, without the fetch lands, without, most of the cards of a fancy mana base, this seems like a pretty reasonable budget entry point to Legacy. Maybe the Transformational Sideboard is not all it is cracked up to be here. It is a pivot, but it was a pivot that kept running into things that were just commonly played in Legacy. With Bowmaster and Wasteland especially at the same time coming up a lot as these like Black Delver and Delver adjacent deck lists were something that we ran into a few times. You know, you've got Riskaminator, you've got these Beans decks that might be on both Bowmaster and Wasteland at the same time. And we also saw some other stuff like Stifle and Brazen Borrower floating around. The raw power of this main deck was 100% there. And the sideboard, I think, did the thing a couple of times. And we certainly wanted it in some of the matchups, but it did feel a little awkward. So I don't know that we achieved the legendary perfect transformational sideboard deck here or anything, but this deck was good and I enjoyed playing it a lot. Jeffrey, thank you very much for submitting this one. And folks, should you need your Spoils of the Vaults or other cards, check out toamagic.com, promo code ThrabenU to let them know that I sent you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya!